Hello and welcome back to the BCR Dawson Sub. This update will cover work undertaken during September of 2022 on the Highway 97 section, the Fort St. John Subdivision extension, and on the sections for Tremblay. This overhead view shows the original alignment of the Fort St. John subdivision on the left. This was basically a tail track after the sidings at Septimus, and on the right, the Dawson Creek subdivision. The Fort St. John subdivision was to have been hidden behind a scenic ridge. I used a boning knife to remove the original alignment of the Fort St. John subdivision. I cut the feeder wires, then removed the track, and then removed the track bed. I left a short portion of the track bed in place to aid in locating the new track so that it will align with the Fort St. John track on the adjoining layout section. The new alignment was laid out and marked with a template assembled from strips of balsa wood. It forms an 18-inch radius curve with easements at either end. The template was pinned in place for checking and marking the alignment. Once through the backdrop, the curve extends onto a rear shelf for the run along the wall. A clearance check through the hole in the backdrop was required. I pinned a section of flex track in place on the sub-roadbed, and I used an 85-foot trailer flat car with trailers to confirm clearance. These are the longest and tallest cars in my fleet. With the template still pinned in place, the new alignment was traced onto the Donnacona. I marked the center line all the way along to aid in locating the track bed, which goes down in two halves. The process of tracing the template and marking the center line was continued onto the rear shelf until the curve merged with the tangent already drawn along the shelf. The rear shelf is about 5/16 of an inch lower than the Donnacona, so I cut a section of the template to use as sub-roadbed on the rear shelf. This view is looking through the opening. This overhead view of the rear shelf shows the balsa sub-roadbed extending from the backdrop to the end of the shelf. On the next section, I will taper the sub-roadbed down to the level of the shelf. And here is the next section, and I've installed the balsa sub-roadbed so that it steps down from 5/16 of an inch to 0 inches in 1/16 inch increments, each of which are 7 inches long. This will then be sanded into a consistent gradient of about 0.70%. This is the Highway 97 section after removal of the track and roadbed for the Fort St. John subdivision. You can see that it's been taken up here. I've left a small piece of the track bed in place, and this is to help align the new track with the track on the adjoining section here, which will not be taken up. The new alignment was located using a balsa wood template, and then it was traced so that I know exactly where it is. And the new alignment will extend across this gap, around this curve, through the backdrop, and onto this rear shelf where I've got a balsa sub-roadbed waiting for it. So the next step will be to get a bridge across this gap to take the track bed, then I can lay the track, and then we can get it all wired up. My friend Kyle Gardner fabricated a span to carry the new alignment across the highway cutting. It comprises a piece of oak sandwiched by 2 sheets of brass so that it will be very firm and won't bend. The holes at each end are for number 4 screws, which will hold it down securely. With the bridge pinned in place, I cut through the Donnacona at each end and then chiseled it out so that the span would sit flush with the top of the Donnacona. The bridge was then screwed down for a test fit. The span was painted flat black and then reinstalled. The transitions from Donnacona to the span were tested with lengths of the foam track bed to ensure that there were no bumps. The old Fort St. John sub-track bus wires were removed, and they were replaced with new ones which extend through the rear wall and along the rear shelf. The command bus, auxiliary track bus, and track bus wires were secured to the underside of the rear shelf. This view of the rear of the Highway 97 section shows the rear shelf attached with the various bus wires secured underneath. There is also an auxiliary bus run up to the upper deck, and that is to power the servos at Tremblay. On the Fort St. John subdivision extension, the sub-roadbed was sanded down to achieve a consistent gradient of approximately 0.70%. A bubble level and a gradient meter were used to monitor the progress. The center line was also marked once again for the foam track bed. And here is the extension sitting against the wall with the sanding work completed. Here is the Highway 97 section. I've now run the bus wires for the track around the back, and they go through the wall and extend under that rear shelf. We've also got the span in place to carry the roadbed across this cutting for the highway, so that's in place, ready to go. And we'll go around the back and see what's going on there. So here's the rear of the Highway 97 module. This rear shelf is now in place. We have the sub roadbed on top, which aligns with this level here. Underneath this, we have the command bus, and we have the auxiliary bus, and we have the track bus. And this is going to extend along the wall and into Septimus. And then we also have an auxiliary bus run that comes up here. This is for the upper deck to power the servos for Tremblay siding. Now if we turn around, here's the shelf along the wall. And you can see that this sub-roadbed ramp has now been sanded into a nice 0.70% grade. So that's all ready for track bed. And then those wires I just mentioned, the command bus and the auxiliary bus and the track bus, they will all run along here, and then they will go into the wall underneath the track. Once the Highway 97 and Pine River sections are installed, the Tremblay sections will be able to go above them. They fared well during the move with little damage, and they require only a few minor alterations, so I wanted to get going on these at this time. Like those underneath Chetwood and Dawson Creek, the singlet decoders for the switches at Tremblay siding had come loose. They were re-secured in the same manner with an adapter plate and a screw to hold them securely underneath the layout. When the layout was dismantled, 2 of the LED light connections to the adjoining section had to be cut. These 2 leads will need to be reattached or replaced. Several of the LED light fixtures also had to be resecured. They had come loose. The LED lighting runs underneath Tremblay terminate at the helix, and I will need to run a return lead back along this section and into the next room to power the LED lighting at Septimus. So I've drilled some passage holes for it along this section and then through the rear stringer. So here are the sections for Tremblay. There's a repair to be done here. I had to cut the wires for the LED lights during disassembly. I couldn't get the jacks through the holes and we were running out of time, so I had to cut the wires. So these will need to be reattached. I've also reattached the singlets for the 2 servos for the siding. Similar in fashion to the ones underneath Chetwood and Dawson Creek. I've installed a plate with a hole, and then the singlet has been screwed onto the plate, so they're now nice and secure. So there's one there, and there's another one here. I've also resecured some of the LED lights that had come loose during the move. Now these LED light strips, these runs terminate here, which adjoins the helix. I'm going to run a return along the back here through the cross member, and then through the rear stringer, and that LED lead is going to extend into the next room to power the LED lights for Septimus. So not too much more to be done, and then these sections will be ready for installation. They fared fairly well during the move, so there was very little damage to repair. I would like to thank my friend Kyle, who fabricated the span across the highway cutting for me. And I hope that you've enjoyed this latest layout update. During October, I'll be working on getting the Fort St. John subdivision trackage laid through the backdrop and along the wall. I do hope to be back next month with another update, and until then, I invite you to like and subscribe to this channel. My website is in the process of being migrated to a new hosting site, so hopefully it'll be back up and available to you soon. Thank you for watching, and until next time, peace be with you.